10 business rivalries of all time. Number 1. Coke versus Pepsi. This is the most well-known example of the 10 biggest business rivalries of all time. The Coke versus Pepsi rivalry has been going on for decades. At one point, Coke was so worried about the competition that they made a pretty big mistake. During what was called the Cola Wars in the 1980s, Pepsi was doing television advertisements where they did taste test experiments. They gave their subjects 2 unmarked sodas and had the subject choose the one they liked best. On the commercials, the subjects chose Pepsi. Coke worried so much about this that they came out with a product called New Coke. Unfortunately, New Coke failed miserably. To make up for the mistake, Coke sent out 400,000 apology letters to customers who complained about the taste of the soda. They went back to their old recipe and called it Coca-Cola Classic. Coke got their customers back. However, the two companies are, and most likely always will be, competing. Number 2. McDonald's versus Burger King. The rivalry between McDonald's and Burger King has gone back to the 1950s and the 60s. Both franchises were trying to make the cheapest burgers that tasted the best. It all started with McDonald's 15-cent hamburger. When Burger King saw this, they decided to come out with a more expensive hamburger that tasted better, and the 37-cent Burger King Whopper was born. When McDonald's saw this, they realized they too needed a huge burger to impress the public. That's how the Big Mac was born. Over the years, the public has each chosen their favorite. Recently, the companies have been arguing over whose chicken nuggets contain the highest quality chicken. Number 3. Ford versus GM. In 1912, General Motors opened its doors. The location that they chose was just a few miles from Henry Ford's Ford dealership. By 1927, Ford was the top dog after selling 15 million Model Ts. GM took notice, and they decided to work harder to dethrone Ford as the #1 company. In 1931, they did just that. They remained the world's leading car manufacturer for over 80 years. In 2008, the company's sales dropped, and GM was forced to file for bankruptcy. After getting rid of their Pontiac, Saturn, and Hummer brands, along with the $12 billion they got from taxpayers, they came back. Chances are, Ford wasn't as happy about this as GM was. Number 4. Dunkin' Donuts versus Starbucks. Many people cannot start their day without that first cup of coffee, including yours truly. Well, when Dunkin' Donuts opened its first location in California, people camped out over the weekend to be the first ones at the chain's new location. Today, Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks hold 60% of the coffee market. According to a Harvard report, Starbucks is currently beating Dunkin' by 12%. For a while, the two companies were able to coexist happily. Dunkin' focused on their baked goods, while Starbucks focused more on their coffee. In 2003, Dunkin' decided to put more attention towards the coffee, and the real war began. Number 5. UPS versus FedEx. FedEx and UPS both do the same thing. They deliver packages to their customers. Each company uses their own method to try to stay on top. FedEx has the largest fleet of all cargo airplanes out of all of the delivery companies. They currently have over 700, and that should continue to rise. UPS is the opposite. They have the most ground vehicles. The company has over 100,000 delivery trucks, and that number is expected to rise as well. Currently, UPS is winning the war. They're worth $94 billion, and FedEx is worth $51 billion. Number 6. Nike versus Reebok. When Nike was first introduced, the company grew very quickly. Unfortunately, in 1984, the company hit a speed bump. They reported a loss for their first quarter. That summer, during the Summer Olympic Games in Los Angeles, Carl Lewis won 4 gold medals wearing a pair of Nike shoes. With Reebok's huge selection of women's jogging shoes, they became the #1 brand. When Michael Jordan started playing for the Chicago Bulls, he signed a shoe contract. When the sneakers became popular, Nike was finally the top dog again. Reebok's sales went way down, and in 2005, Adidas bought Reebok for $3.8 billion. Number 7. Boeing versus Airbus. Over 100 years ago, the first commercial flight took one passenger up into the sky. The passenger paid what would equal $10,000 today. After that, more planes were built, and the two manufacturers, Airbus and Boeing, went head-to-head. Over the years, they have been fighting for the #1 position. Number 8. Hasbro versus Mattel. Hasbro and Mattel are the two leading toy manufacturers in the world, and they're always competing for the top spot. In the 1960s, when Mattel came out with Barbie, they dominated the toy industry. Later, they lost the #1 spot to Mattel thanks to the Transformer action figures. In 1996, Mattel offered to buy Hasbro for $5.2 million. However, Hasbro declined the offer. Over the years, the two have been competing for the best toys and the top spot. Number 9. at&t versus MCI. In 1974, MCI sued at&t, and they won $1.8 billion. This caused at&t to fall apart. Soon, long-distance companies were competing for the top spot in long-distance calling. This resulted in long-distance calls becoming more affordable. In the 1990s, MCI merged with WorldCom. Sadly, they were forced to file for bankruptcy in 2002, and they were bought out by Verizon for $7.6 billion in 2005. MCI tried to be creative and started 1-800-COLLECT as well as a phone-based music store. Unfortunately, it just wasn't enough, and at&t won that war. Number 10. Atari versus Sega. And then Nintendo came along. Before there was the PlayStation, Xbox, and even Nintendo, Atari and Sega were competing for the title of the top video game system. In the beginning, Atari was the true pioneer. When Nintendo released their gaming system and they became popular, Sega took the place of Atari. That started a whole new video game war between Sega and Nintendo. It didn't take long for Nintendo to take the #1 spot. Subscribe for more.